Okay, it's 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. here in Chicago time, and it's great to have you here. This is the meeting that we are going to discuss about challenges that people have across the world, basically the brain stimulation labs across the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. And we hope that it would be a helpful meeting to share the experiences that we have and also best practices that different labs are, taking into account, being able to handle the complexities that we are facing with COVID-19. We are going to have 12 speakers, and Marom and I are going to be kind of co-chairing the meeting. Marom, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, good. So Marom and I are going to chair the meeting. We have 12 speakers, and I can see right now many of them are already kind of online. So hopefully we'll go for something like 1 hour. It's going to be a short panel, 1 hour. Each speaker would be speaking for something like 3 to 4 minutes. And then we will have time for those who are in the meeting room to be able to share their own kind of experiences. And that is going to be helpful as well. So we are recording the session, and we are going to put the recorded session on YouTube. So if there is anybody who is not interested to have his face or her face on the YouTube, just kind of, you can just turn off your camera, getting sure that it's not going to be recorded. Otherwise, we are going to broadcast the video on YouTube. Marom, we are with you.
No, I'm just really grateful, Mohammad, for you putting this together, and I'm very grateful to have these wonderful colleagues here for this session.
Fantastic, good. So let's just get us started. I have all the slides that we have on my computer. I will try to control that from my computer, getting sure it will not kind of waste time to just shift between different computers. And we will go from here, just give you an idea about this specific panel is organized by 3 different virtual networks, and they contributed helping us to put this panel together. One network is the International Network of TMS Trial for Addiction Medicine. They are going to have their 4th webinar on May 13. So if you are interested, you would be welcome to join that specific network and the next webinar that they have on May 13th. There's another network in the International Society for Addiction Medicine, which is focused on neuroscience, part of addiction medicine. Their next webinar is going to be on May 27th. So if you are interested to join that webinar, that is also open for those who are interested. And the International Network of TS-fMRI studies, they have their 4th webinar on June 10th. So those who are interested, as another network which is basically sponsoring or supporting this panel. The first speaker would be Ti-Fei from Shanghai Mental Center. Ti-Fei, we are with you.
Okay, hi everyone. So thanks, Mohammad, for organizing this. So I'm introducing something ongoing from my own lab, and I asked several friends to share their experience with us. But it's really brief. So basically, we didn't do much under this special time. So can you go next slide? So basically, my own self, we have both animal and human study. So all the on-site works are suspended since the last several days of January, because Wuhan city has lockdown since January 22nd, and it's already the Spring Festival. So basically, we stopped all our work for past 3 months, and in past 1 month, the animal part has gradually recovering. So you see, we recently prepared 20 to 30 mice for the DBS surgery, and we're trying to have some basic research recovering. But for the clinical data collection, it's still suspended. We have been talking to the university, to all the other research labs. So potentially we might have a recover after May or after June. So it's still unclear because all the universities are still suspended. So the students are still at home and they are not allowed to come back. So they can only do the online course and all the data analysis. Can you go next slide? So the things we do, basically that's all we can do is the data analysis. So basically you collect the TMS data and TMS EEG data and all the resting EEG data and cognitive data before and during our different clinical trials. So we are just analyze them and reanalyze them. We cross and we integrate different data sets, and we try to organize this just through online meetings. So each of us has like 1 to maybe 4 online meetings for in the group every week. So to facilitate the exchange of ideas and the progress of the data. So also the important thing I want to mention is which is not organized by my own lab, but it's organized by different TMS companies in China. So there has been so many online courses which is freely available to different people, to all the graduate students and to clinical doctors who are interested in learning how to use TMS, also TDCS, and also other ways of neuromodulation. And you see that for each time there could be several thousands or even 10,000 attenders. So I think during this special period, people actually learn more just because it's freely available and you have nothing to do. You just watch the course. So next slide. So the related activities, I'm just sharing you. So I asked the different friends or companies or clinical departments, so what they are doing during this period. So first thing, the clinical treatment is still ongoing. So you see that people are still treating the depression patients at their department, but just with a mask. And also people are proposing that we can use TMS to treat the COVID caused depression. And this might also be used to elevate the epidemic associated anxiety. So there have been many proposals, opinion papers, or viewpoints showing that we can use neuromodulation to facilitate the treatment for mood disorders associated with this social distance period. So that's all my sharing, and thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Ti-Fei. Andrea, Antal from Germany.
Yeah, I am here. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for organizing this meeting. Thank you, Marom. So telling the truth, I have not had the energy and motivation to organize anything like this. And I'm very happy to be here virtually. So the situation is in Germany, in Göttingen. Labs have been closed since 15th of March. We have home office. No experiments, no studies are running, nothing, absolutely nothing. And everything are stopped. In the MRI, we have no appointments, nothing, except for very urgent clinical cases. For example, we had a study with the patients with depression. I have a running study and home stimulation study, and the patients have the stimulation at home. Luckily, they are so the number of stimulation sessions were saved and predetermined, so they are not able to misuse the stimulator. There are no thesis committee meetings, no PhD exams, nothing. So next slide, please. So my main problem is that I don't know what to do with the data, because many of the patients stayed without final examinations or follow-up measurements. About half of the patients now. Should we start new studies? Or should we continue these studies? Can we ever publish this kind of data or not? And the studies are part of PhD and MS, so master dissertations. And I don't know what to say the students now. So because I don't know how long will it take. I think in Göttingen or in Germany, maybe we can recruit patients in July or August if there is no second peak now. If there is a peak, I don't know, maybe in November, the Christmas time. And we have already financial restrictions related to research. So we are not allowed to give out extra money, what was not planned in 2019 for research and for teaching, because all of the money turned to the patient care. So I don't know what to do. And how can we make plans for the future? For 2001, 2002, 2023, so I don't know. And should we consider alternative funding possibilities? Because I'm sure that for this kind of research, we will have less money in the future. It happened exactly in 2008, 2009 in Europe. And almost half of the money, EU money, was removed from the research that time. And this is even a worse situation what we had in 2008, 2009. So these are my thoughts for today. And so thank you again. Bye.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, the next speaker would be Dr. I from the National Brain Mapping Laboratory from Iran. I received an email from Mohammad Reza that he will have problems in terms of getting connected. I'm not sure if Dr. I, are you with us right now? Okay, it seems that he has a problem in terms of getting connected. It seems that Zoom is filtered in Iran, or they cannot use the kind of Iranian IPs for getting connected to Zoom. That is the other challenge they have. But they have their slides, so they send a few slides in terms of, this is the Iranian National Brain Mapping that they have recently launched, I think in 2016. Some pictures from the center. So they have a research devoted MR scanner. They have TMS, EEG, I mean, all the kind of imaging and stimulation facilities. And they have different studies going on since 2016. The challenges that they have, I can read the slide. They basically closed the labs from March 10th. And they are kind of reopening the lab from April 11th. And they are trying to, it seems that they are trying to manage being able to bring back people. But I've heard from some of the students that they have challenges in terms of convincing patients, or technically, I mean, everybody who is going to attend a study to come to a kind of a research setting. And even because their research setting is not inside the hospital, it's outside their university, but they still have challenges in terms of convincing people to come to a sort of kind of clinical setting, being able to assess for imaging. So they have challenges to, even when they reopen the lab, they still have challenges in bringing people to the lab to be able to do the imaging and all other things. So it seems that we will see how experiences in Iran would be kind of give us some data in terms of when you reopen the society, how things are going to get more complex in the future. So we will see in the next couple of weeks how they're going to be able to handle those challenges. So that is the slides from Iran. And then from Italy, Graziella, could you join us?
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here and to share our challenges in this very unprecedented situation. I'm a neurologist. I work for a private clinic treating addictions, and I'm the scientific director of our no-profit organization, that is the Novella Fronda Foundation. Basically, since the new coronavirus outbreak, we are facing similar challenges from a research point of view. So we closed the lab, we stopped every neurophysiology experiment, and actually we were running a double-blind sham-controlled study in gambling disorder using RTMS and using functional MRI. So actually, we are losing data from some of these patients who were were in treatment, and we are going to miss data from the follow-up meetings. Which solutions we adopted? Of course, we implemented all the research activities from home in terms of writing manuscripts, reviewing articles, involving trainees that are not allowed, of course, in labs, in bibliography and in brainstorming new ideas and new projects. From clinic point of view, it's even more complicated because at a national level, mobility between one region and another is very restricted, and so patients can not come physically to the clinic. And as soon as we heard about the restrictions, we decided to close the clinic for 1 week to set all the procedures and to get the clinic and the professional equipped for any possible contagion, and so to work safely for professionals and also to guarantee a safety condition for our patients. It's also difficult because our patients are experiencing an increase of psychological distress, and so we are supporting them through video calls, and we are doing all our best to keep going with the psychological support with this mean, basically. And of course, we also set a triage when a patient comes to the clinic to check every clinical condition related to the new coronavirus infection. I share with all of you, of course, the issues for the near future, and likewise, I don't have definitive answers, and this is the great occasion to discuss. So how we can handle, from a research point of view, the missing data and the data we collected so far, how we are going to handle the economical problems related to fundings, but also we should discuss about the healthcare services for our patients. So how we will be able to reorganize our healthcare service for our patients, and probably the telemedicine can be an option. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grazia. Thank you very much. And Paola from Italy. Paola, could you hear us?
No. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you really well.
Is okay? Okay. So first of all, thank you very much again to the organizer for this really great idea of organizing this possibility of sharing experiences among labs. It's my favorite session too. So what happened in my lab? First of all, for those of you who are not familiar with my work, I just want to say that I work my lab belongs to one of the largest neurorehabilitation research institute in Europe, which is in Rome, Fondazione Santa Lucia. And most of our work approach for aphasia, or in general for cognitive recovery. Combine these cognitive protocols with neuromodulation. So we cannot have any other way to collect data other than testing these treatments directly on patients. So the direct immediate effects of coronavirus was the perception of a high risk because the language treatment and the cognitive treatment involves a direct contact between the clinicians and patients. So we had difficulties to keep a safe distance and using the mask and applying electrodes. Also because if we would have used the mask, the language, the verbal communication would have been distorted, the verbal exchange. And also most of the patients were not autonomous and considered transport to be dangerous. So for all of these reasons, at the beginning of March, the patients and caregivers asked us to interrupt the research, and we closed our lab. So what we are doing, in some way we were lucky because we, before closing, we had some data already collected. So what we are doing now is to write all backlogs of yet to be analyzed data. But my biggest concern is not really related on what is happened, but I'm worried on what will happen in the future, in the sense that assuming that in some way we would have the possibility not to be still locked down and then to go back to the clinic. But what will happen? I believe that all the problems related to brain injuries, such as aphasia or whatever, or Alzheimer's disease, might be in some way overshadowed by the effects of coronavirus. And I believe that most of the patients will probably maintain an attitude of resistance, closure towards clinical research protocol due to the fact that, as I say, the treatment involves in some way a direct contact with the patient, and also the application of the electrodes. And maybe there will be also a poor availability of caregivers to accompany the patients who are not autonomous. Regarding our foundings at the Fondazione Santa Lucia, is in the future they will be or not available. My idea is that independently of the fact that we can go on writing reviews or all data, maybe we can think of offering telerehabilitation to the patients, and then maybe home-based rehabilitation, and TDCS could be a strong candidate option if we can move the treatment inside inside the patient home and maybe give some instructions to the family or to the caregiver on how to use TDCS. Could be an idea.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences.
Thank you.
Now we go to Brazil. Ester, could you hear us? Ester, could you hear us? I can see that you are here online, but we do not have your audio or video so far. Okay, Esther, we can move forward and go back to you whenever, your internet connection is going to work. So the last chance. Okay, we can get back to your slides at the end of the talk, getting sure that you would have the connection. Okay, from Austria, we invited Claus Lamm. It seems that it seems that Ester is hearing us, but we cannot hear you, Ester. So, I mean, if you can do it in the kind of the last at the last talk, we definitely will be back to you. From Austria, we invited Claus Lamm, and Claus was trying to join us, but he had problems in terms of different things in home. So he sent us an email that he's not able to join us, but he sent us that it's a slide that it seems that they have, the same challenges that we have. They stopped working from mid-March, and all the labs are closed down in Vienna. And from May 4th, it seems that some of the labs are going to reopen, but how those things are going to happen, they are not quite sure about that. So that is the experience from Claus. And I'm receiving lots of feedbacks from other friends that, as they are doing something like homeschooling, that is another challenge that some of the parents are facing right now in terms of just being able to do their work and also doing homeschooling for their kids. That is the other challenge some of the kind of researchers are sharing with us. In the meeting room, we have just 100 seats. And we reached 100 seats in the first few minutes of the meeting. So it seems that there are many people out of the meeting room, but the meeting room is just 100 seats. And the good thing is that we are recording the session, so those who are interested, they can see the session afterwards. So from New Zealand, we have Dirk. Dirk, could you hear us right now?
Yes, I can. Well, good.
Hello, Dirk.
Good day, and for people who from the eastern part of the world like myself, it's after midnight. So can I have my first slide, Mohammad? Yes. So I'm a neurosurgeon and do research in both invasive and non-invasive neurosurgery, and I work in a collaborative group which is called BRAIN. And it is located in different parts of the world. So a part where I'm right now is at the University of Otago in New Zealand. Part is in Seoul in Korea. Part is in Texas, in Trinity College, Germany. So we're trying to work around the different approaches that countries have taken. And apart from those 5 research locations, there is also a clinic where we just provide clinical treatments for patients with different pathologies like tinnitus, pain, depression, anxiety, basically everything that we research in the research centers. Now, from a practical point of view, the eastern part of the world, including New Zealand, Australia, China, and Korea, are doing pretty well in the sense that it's mostly under control, whereas in Europe, the amount of new cases has been started to drop. So from a practical point of view, what we see is that all research has closed down, and all research centers that are collaborating within BRAIN, except now for Korea, where hands-on studies have restarted. In Belgium, where we have the clinic, that was closed. And is actually reopening since yesterday. So that is for the clinical part, but all research everywhere else has been blocked. So this creates, of course, a lot of disadvantages, both for research, which is stopped everywhere except for small TTCS studies now happening in Korea. And the neurostimulation clinic has been able to restart since yesterday. However, the problem is that according to the new rules, we can only treat essential pathology, but what is essential has not been defined. So we had to come up with guidelines basically to tell why we think something is essential or severe. So we just created for the different pathologies our own guidelines that tell us whether somebody has severe pathology, at least severe enough for us to treat them in the neuromodulation clinic. Now, of course, these are practical disadvantages, but there is also advantages both on the clinical and the academic side. On the clinical side, because we, in Belgium, for example, we were not allowed legally to do any online clinics via any means. And this, of course, has now been approved very recently by the Belgian Medical Council, so that we are allowed to do online clinics, which I think might actually stay even after the crisis. So that will help us to, for example, do follow-ups for patients who have to travel quite a bit, even though Belgium is a very small country. Due to its constant traffic jams, it might save some time both for the patients and for us. It will also benefit international patients as well to have online clinics, which we are now allowed to do. Furthermore, it also helps us to restructure the working of the clinic, the patient flow, the standardizing our outcome measures, and etc., because the clinic only started a year and a half ago. So, and the advantages of this crisis are actually that we have some freed up time that allows us to improve the working of the clinic. Academically, of course, like all the other speakers I've already mentioned, well, we have a little bit more time now to write papers, book chapters, reviews, etc. And so, from a practical point of view, I think the advantages are important, and as long as the crisis doesn't last too long, will probably allow us to function better and even design our research any better. For example, we've now also submitted an IRB together with University of Bonn in Germany to see if we could not do transcranial vagal nerve stimulation for patients in acute respiratory distress because of COVID, based on the anti-inflammatory response and some very preliminary and some very pilot data in rats that suggest that actually it might be beneficial to do that. So I think, as with every crisis, there is some benefits and some opportunities. For a very practical point of view, Belgium didn't have a government again for a very long time, and the crisis actually forced the king to appoint a minority government just to get things going in Belgium. So I do think that with all of that in place, we should certainly not only look at the difficulties of this COVID problem, but also look at beautiful opportunities that it creates. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dirk. It was a really nice talk. Thank you. Okay, from Japan, Aki, could you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, the situation of COVID-19 in Japan in Japanese university are basically almost the same. The university is basically closed, but for the project in Fiji, so it is very difficult to stop. Otherwise, the budget is actually very, very. Budget amount is so huge. At that time, just in case it is allowed to enter the or continue the some of the study, but budget is okay in Japan, at least in this fiscal year. Unlike in other countries, the fiscal year in Japan started just from the beginning of April. So the budget has already been distributed to all the university, but it is quite unclear what happened in next fiscal year. And the state of emergency of Japan was announced over Japan by Prime Minister just 5 days ago. And then in Nagoya, in my city, it was 10 days ago. So the situation is becoming worse, but still the number of patients in Japan by population is not so large as compared with other countries. But our university decided to have a lecture online. And one of the university tried to the lecture just by Zoom. But as you can guess, the connection is so huge, and then it was not sufficient to have all the students to connect simultaneously. So our university has now been preparing on-demand system. Now I and my colleague are taking video for students to have a lecture. And another issue is it is quite difficult to employ the graduate student. The salary is, we can pay the salary for researcher and postdoc basically 100% at the moment, but not for graduate student. Our university decided to stop the employee for their safety in March. So tentatively, we may be able to restart employing them from the beginning of June, but still unclear. So all we can do is to work with researchers. So our research is actually our university's engineering school. What we are doing is the modeling. So we are working as usual by remote or by Skype with my collaborators. But as you see, the clinical study is not allowed at all. So the situation is almost the same over the world. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Aki. Thank you very much. Okay, the next speaker would be George from Portugal. George, could you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Fantastic. You can put it all there. I guess it's easier. Just keep on going. There you go. There you go. So, well, first of all, thank you, Mohammad and Marom, for organizing. I think we heard already some strategies that help us cope with what's happening. Let me start just saying that the current situation in Portugal, although it's not good, is not as terrible as what's happening in our neighbors, Spain and Italy. Unfortunately for them, unfortunately for all of us, we have 21,000 cases currently, and numbers are trending. Still getting a lot of new cases per day, but it's going down, as you can see in the curve. We've been in lockdown at the University of Coimbra from March 9th, so we started very early on. The rector of the university proposed that we would move to online teaching and essentially online meetings. And since then, the university has been closed. State of emergency was declared on March 18th, so 9 days later, and we're still in the state of emergency until perhaps mid-May, I think, or beginning of May and perhaps mid-May. Fortunately, people are starting to speak about, ending the state of emergency, ending lockdown, slowly ending the lockdown, and allowing people to move around. And hopefully that's going to happen, if we can, and, safety first, obviously, but hopefully it's going to happen relatively soon. Now, my lab is slightly different from the labs that we've been listening from. I don't do any clinical work. I do cognitive neuroscience. We do have a lot of experiments going on, some of them in the scanner, some of them, TES and fMRI. Get to stop them. Obviously, probably, it's multiple sessions, experiments in multiple sessions. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to use some of the subjects that didn't finish all the sessions. And what we decided to do, I guess, as a lab was, we have to take advantage of what we have right now. This is what we're given. This is what we have to work with. And so what we started doing was, obviously teleworking, teaching, I have a kid at home, so we're all doing our child rearing and working at the same time, obviously. But other than that, I think what we thought of is just start doing online experimenting. Obviously not with TES or with Fronda, but the idea was to think about novel experiments that we could work online first, do pilot studies online, prepare the actual experiments, so that once we're given the green code to start working again and start collecting data again in terms of TDCS, TMS, and fMRI, we could just hit the ground running and just not have to worry about checking whether our experimental paradigms are working. So this is what we've been doing. We've been using Open Sesame, using Site Toolkit, other online softwares that you can use. We've been obviously looking at whether our designs could be transferable online platform, replicating some of our results behaviorally. And we've passed that part. I think that's done. We can use Open Sesame, for instance. And now we're just collecting data, preparing future experiments to then, certain of the branches of the experiment that we can do behaviorally, and then we can just add on the TDCS later when we go back to our labs. But this is the situation in Portugal, and although we were not, we're relatively good situation compared to our neighbors, but we're still in almost as bad as them. But this is what we're doing now. We're trying to make the best out of these complex times, and the solution was, besides all the stuff that people have been saying, the solution was to move into online experimenting. And thanks, Hamid and Marom.
Thank you very much for being with us, George. And Esther, could you hear us now from Brazil? Esther, could you hear us? Could you kind of share your camera, just testing if you can back to your slides? Okay, I can see that you are not mute, but I cannot hear you. Okay. Yeah, it seems that we have the same problem. Okay, whenever you can kind of, to realize that you can kind of fix the problem, just let us know. Okay, the next speaker would be Charlie Stack from UK. Charlie, we are with you.
Hi, thank you. So our experiences are fairly similar to others in Europe. Our labs closed completely on the 13th of March, though we're lucky enough to be able to keep our animal lines going. Everything else has stopped. The university's closed with an aim of reopening in October, and the labs hopefully a little before that, but obviously we shall have to see. We are an incredibly international university, like many others, so our students have mostly gone home, so they're distributed around the world. However, some people weren't able to go, so we do have people alone in student accommodation in a pretty deserted city. So it's a very mixed picture in terms of where our people are and the challenges they're facing. And like other countries with a nationalised health service, our clinical researchers are pretty much entirely back in full-time clinical work in the hospitals, and likely to remain so. So really no active research going on at all in Oxford at the moment. If you go to the next slide, though, I think I won't spend too much time echoing what other speakers have said. I think there's been a lot of very sensible things said and points made. I think it's a good time for getting out the studies that have been lingering in the lab for a long time. We have a number, I'm sure many labs around the world do, and now is a good time, I think, to get those out. We're finding it's particularly good to bring out work on negative findings, which is hugely important for the field and should be published, but always seems to slip down the list of in order of priority. And now is a really good time to get that out and share that. We're also working on pre-registered reports, something we don't normally have time to do because our PhDs are relatively short, and so there's a pressure to get on to the next experiment. But now we can think about them, we can design them, and we can get our trials properly registered and our studies registered in advance. And I think that's going to be a really good way of increasing the robustness of work going on over the next little while when we are allowed to go back. But I think it is really important to acknowledge the challenges. There are real challenges to this, not just in terms of our science, but in terms of our groups and their career progression. We need to go to conferences because we need to share our data and to learn other things. But for our early career researchers, it's absolutely vital for them to go and bump into their next boss over a coffee. And that's really hard to do if you can't go anywhere. So things like this are fantastic. It's really great to come and talk about science, to see some new people, to hear some new ideas. I think that's hugely welcome for everybody. There are a lot of other things going on, which are great. You can hear webinars, all kinds of teaching and sharing of ideas, which is brilliant. But it is difficult. Yeah, the over coffee chat is difficult. We have got around that slightly by inviting big names from far afield that we couldn't normally afford to have give lab meetings to come and talk to us. And that's been a real success, actually. We've had some wonderful ones. Marom came last week, which was absolutely brilliant. And we've got a few more people coming. And that's a real way for the students in the group to interact, get to know these people, and for us to see some new faces and hear some great science. But I think, for some people, this is a great opportunity in academia, and academic work is flourishing. For others, it really isn't. And that's a very unequal distribution. Caring responsibilities, be that to children at home and trying to homeschool them, as I am, or those of us with families, elderly parents who are also trying to look after them. It's a very unequal distribution of caring and a very unequal effect it will have on day-to-day lives. And so I think our group have been particularly keen on acknowledging that. We've had very, very we're not psychologists, but we've had thoughts about it. We've had very explicit discussions about mental well-being. We've put regular lab meetings in, both in terms of scientific lab meetings, but actually just in terms of coffees and chats and online board games and various other things, film nights the students have been doing. We've introduced a buddy scheme whereby people don't necessarily feel obliged to come and chat to us every day, and that's fine, but that somebody really clearly responsible for keeping an eye on each student member and making sure that they're in contact and that they're okay and they've got what they need. And I think a clear message that this isn't perfect. None of us, I think, hand on heart, are working as productively as we might otherwise be. And part of that is obviously because we can't collect data, but part of that is also because none of us are quite in the right mindset. And I think we need to be explicit about that. And I think we need to make the students feel that that is natural and that we will do our best to support them in everything they can do and encourage them, but not lead to an expectation, I think, is dangerous at the moment. So I guess that's a slightly different take on things from and echoing what the previous speakers have said. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. It was very good. It was very, very good. Good. The next speaker is Lige. Esther, if you can open your video, then we can get sure that you are able to share your experience from Brazil as the last speaker. Lige, could you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Perfectly well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much again, just echoing everybody in organizing this and allowing me to share our experiences too. We do we have a clinical research program using TDCS to treat patients with multiple sclerosis and other neurologic disorders. I'll go to the next slide. So here in Midtown Manhattan, the NYU's response to the pandemic was placing a pause on human subjects research on March 10th, which really eliminated the option for in-person research visits. However, there was a provision for remote visits to continue on. And we can go to the next one. And fortunately, we've been doing tele-research or tele-rehabilitation for several years. We went to the tele-research space originally to reach patients in their homes, to allow for higher sample sizes, volumes, and to extend treatment protocols, which we really believe is necessary to adequately evaluate the benefit of TDCS for clinical use. So we call the protocol that we developed remotely supervised, or RS-TDCS, and it's really meant to be an extension of on-site or lab-based TDCS with a lot of rigor to deliver TDCS to patients in their homes, again, trying to maintain clinical trial standards. We are live with the patients at every visit using HIPAA-compliant video conferencing. And there's a lot of, it's a very standardized protocol with a lot of stop criteria to ensure safety and uniformity. And it's been quite successful. We've been able to do over 4,500 at-home treatment sessions now over the few years that we've been in this space. And so we were well positioned to go remotely because our trials were remote. So we've been fortunate to be able to continue our studies. Go to the next one. So we have 3 ongoing clinical trials, all in MS right now. The first, we're treating patients at home with 30 treatment sessions, targeting fatigue and cognitive functioning. And we were able to continue the treatment sessions with the patients who were already enrolled, and also moves pretty smoothly to new enrollments as well remotely. So that trial is pretty much continued. A second trial is looking at motor function, upper extremity motor function for 20 sessions. And again, we were able to continue the remote treatments. And we've also moved to remote enrollment now here. It's been a little bit logistically complicated in that there's more moving parts for motor studies, the motor study. And so it's required some creative shipping and working with patients a little bit more intensely to get them set up through the video setup. And the only trial that's really had a pause is a study where we have an imaging outcome. So we repeat simultaneous TDCS and MRI at baseline and then after 20 sessions of treatment. And so while we can continue the treatments in this trial, we're not able to do imaging right now. So this period has really, I think, broken through many, many barriers in telemedicine. And that's just tremendous advance. And so I think that this is really supporting the use of tele-research as well. And I'm hopeful for the future that this can expand and give us more options for our clinical trials. I was going to echo what Dr. Stagg mentioned as far as mental health. That's one thing that we have thought about because we have quite a few behavioral outcomes in terms of mood and fatigue and symptom. And so that's going to be a complication when we look at outcomes because of this time. It's just hit everybody so hard and also hit people differentially. And so that's going to require some real consideration. But overall, we've been fortunate to be in the tele-research space because we've been able to largely continue our trials.
Thank you very much, Rich. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It was a great presentation. Fantastic. Okay. Now the panel is open for those who are going to share their own experiences. Marom, if you have any specific note, I definitely need to thank Marom for putting together such a kind of nice and interesting platform of giving people that level of freedom to be able to organize different meetings. And I heard from students from yesterday that, there has been lots of really good meetings yesterday discussing about different topics in the field. So, many thanks to Marom for kind of organizing such a kind of nice resource for all of us across the world to be able to get connected and use all those resources. Okay, those who are interested to share their own experiences, please turn on your mic. And for Juliana, do you want to kind of share your question? Kind of, can you open your video and share your question? We can see your question right now in the chat area. Hi, Juliana.
I'm a physiotherapist on São Paulo. I work on Central Institute of Hospital Clinics, and we are searching for the rationale for use NIN techniques, neuromodulation techniques in patients infected with COVID. And I would like to ask you, Lee, if you have any recommendation for cleaning the TDCS equipment.
Yeah, so that's a definite consideration. And so we go through a system where we have incoming equipment that's stored separately, that then we operate based on actually a sticker system where it's red when it comes in, and then it's cleaned, and then we remove the sticker to it's green when it's ready to go. We have a checklist for the cleaning of the equipment, but it's something very important. And also, while we're shipping equipment to our participants too in their homes, we want to make sure that they are completely assured that things are clean and that the protocols for cleaning and safety have been followed. So that's a great consideration to mention, especially when we're sharing headsets and other equipment. So yeah, we're very careful about that.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So we have kind of many other kind of lab directors from different places. I can see that we have Colin Hanlon here. We have Holly Lizambi. I mean, some other colleagues across the world. So it would be nice if they share their own experiences from what they are doing in their own labs. That would be fantastic.
Hi, this is Colleen. Can you hear me?
Hello, Colleen. We can hear you.
Excellent. Well, first of all, I really appreciated this session. Admittingly, I didn't really know how valuable it would be at first, but it's incredibly refreshing to hear voices direct from the ground all over the world. So thank you, Mohammad, for organizing it. It's wonderful. So we're pretty much in the same boat as everyone else. I'm in North Carolina now at Wake Forest University. All the research has shut down, but and I've been basically teaching my lab staff how to run SPSS and how to use EndNote and making the time to write papers like everyone else. But actually, this week, we're starting to become more optimistic that we'll be potentially able to reopen sometime in the next few weeks. And so we've started developing standard operating procedures for all of our TMS studies that will allow us to execute them while maintaining the sort of social distance measures that I think are in place maybe in Germany and Denmark, perhaps. So that our criteria, this is a challenge. I'm not sure we'll be able to achieve it yet, but our criteria are to be able to conduct a TMS experiment where everybody's in masks, where no two individuals are closer than 6 feet together for more than 10 minutes. So that will be the challenge with TMS. No more than 10 people in a room, and all the equipment needs to be sanitized between each participant. So those are our 4 criteria right now. And this is not necessarily sanctioned by the university yet, but this is at least what we're trying to be proactive such that we can start as soon as possible. And so we've actually been talking to BrainSight with neuronavigation to try to figure out how we can leverage the power of neuronavigation to try to minimize the amount of time we spend positioning the TMS coil on the top of the person's head. So we're just trying to think creatively about solutions. So certainly if anybody else out there has any experiences or any ideas for us, we'd love to hear them.
And this is Holly Lisenby from the National Institute of Mental Health. And our intramural research program, TMS Lab, is closed for human subject studies, just like many labs across the country and across the world, as we've been hearing. But in the meantime, we are continuing to analyze existing data, write manuscripts, and maintain lab cohesion by using Microsoft Teams or Slack or other, Zoom meetings, WebEx meetings, and so on. We're also aware, in terms of my extramural role, that this global pandemic has affected researchers in other fields as well as impacting patient care. I know that this session is about non-invasive stimulation, but an area that has been really significantly impacted is electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT. And you could argue that the severity of illness that patients have when they need to have ECT could justify that as an emergency procedure. But unlike TMS, ECT requires anesthesia, which affects exposure to the anesthesiologist and the other staff performing the treatment. And so this is something that's being addressed across the country, and I'm sure globally. But that's the view from the NIMH. And I'll just point out that the pivot towards telepsychiatry and telemedicine has been very important. And I was really interested to hear the presentations about at-home brain stimulation approaches. And it seems that innovation in that area could be important going forward.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you very much for your contribution. Okay, we have other colleagues we have Xiao. Could you hear us from China? Esther, now we can see you.
And you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you and you can hear it. Okay.
I'm sorry, I changed the computer. So you don't need to put my slide. I just want to...
Go ahead.
Okay. Here. This is the same. Thank you for inviting me to talk about Brazil. But before Corona, COVID, we were already in restriction of funding for research around here in Brazil because we are in a political crisis along with the coronavirus now. But then we have a lot of basic research. Our university has been closed from 18 March and will be closed until up to 30 April, but we think that we'll be closer for longer because we are in the raising our cases for now. And we have some research in here that we work with in the development of a neurofeedback system with engineering colleagues and psychology colleagues also. And of course, we cannot do this research now. We were already starting to run a project with a apraxia of a speech in Down syndrome, but we were at the beginning, so we didn't collect any data yet. And all the research in drug addiction, we cannot recruit our patients, so we cannot follow this research. For now, we are trying to make some reanalysis of our data. And the one thing that we are continues to do is to write a chapter on TDCS in substance use disorder, which has been asked before. So we are working remotely with my group. And that's all of it. So regarding funding, we have no clue of what's going to be in our future.
Okay, thank you, Esther, very much. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, we have colleagues from, other countries across the world. That would be nice if you step up and just kind of share your personal experiences about what is happening. I can put a spot on people, but I'm not going to do that. So those who are interested to share their own experiences, that would be fantastic if they share their experiences.
Hi, this is Xiao Chu. Can you hear me?
Yes, Xiao, we can hear you really well.
Yes, I'm in China, and actually the similar things I just like the person just shared, and our lab closed just from because in the China the January and February is usually is a holiday season. So we closed our lab in the end of the January, and so far it's not open, not reopen. But I think they will be reopen very soon. In the May, I think should be open. But the most difficult thing is we cooperate with our for the drug addiction studies, use the TDCS, and because we want to apply that in the drug user, but in China, the drug user always be in the very special areas. Now this area is closed. Where no one can enter into it. So we are waiting for something, some policy for the more, and give the policy can give some way to how to continue our experiment. So everything, the several amount more than 2 months closed, but I think in the China we can see some the morning some things, but they are still in the dark, I think. Okay, anyway.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. Okay, who else would be interested to share the experiences?
Ahmed, maybe I could share something else.
Sure.
I asked about the cleaning because we are interested in search the rationale to apply neuromodulation techniques, especially TMS, TDCS, and transcutaneous vagus nerve stimulation for infection and inflammation in patients infected with COVID. In our neuromodulation clinic, the activities is suspended now, but because the entire institute was transformed in a reference center to receive patients with the new coronavirus. And we are looking for the literature to apply these techniques in the patients, because we have a pilot study in progress because the crisis, before, and we are applying to DCS in supplementary motor area in patients with the problems with respiratory muscles, especially focus activity of diaphragm, in patients with high cervical spinal cord injury that we are trying to associate with some respiratory exercises and peripheral stimulation in these abdominal muscles. And we have some interesting experiences, but it's not published yet. And for example, one patient, we could avoid the tracheostomy using this kind of stimulation. So we are excited to the possibility to help in patients infected with COVID, trying focus these muscles, maybe respiratory failure. Maybe we could shorten the time depending this ventilator winning, maybe something like this, but it's very preliminary.
Thank you, Juliana. Thank you, Juliana, for sharing your experiences from Sao Paulo, right?
Yes, University of Sao Paulo.
Okay, sure. You are from USP.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic, good. Other colleagues from, across the world, I can see that Stacy Daughters is with us, Agnes Fluel, others who are kind of interested to share their own experiences. Or sharing your questions or whatever you have for the speakers.
I'm a bit, we heard a lot about challenges. I don't know if people had ideas of things that we could do together as a community other things? Obviously, this discussion is the beginning, but are there other things we can create or work on as a community that will, in a very short order, that will help? I'm not sure. I'm asking.
Can I have some feedback here?
Yes, Ali, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm the last year PhD student working with Michael Nietzsche. So basically, in this time, we were busy with writing some papers and proposals. In my experience, what was very frustrating is that the peer review process has been so lengthy. So we submit a paper, and then after 1 month, the editor handled it. And I was thinking that it should be better because most of us are at home and have more time. This is one of the experience, but from the point that Marom just mentioned, I think sooner or later we will have a challenge for early career researchers about funding. So maybe the people who are in the field have to decide to the funding organization to decide, okay, they can extend the fundings and consider more about this. I think this is important for early career researcher. These are the 2 points that I wanted to share with you guys.
Yeah, one of the things that we have recently done in our network, we have a network in the International Society for Addiction Medicine. And we have started to realize that the funding is going to be a major challenge for our neuroscience studies in the field of addiction medicine. So we have already started to invite policymakers and those who are involved in kind of deciding about the grants and sharing their own kind of our experiences with them. So whenever we have a webinar, we are also inviting not only people from the science community, we also invite people from the policymakers who are going to think about the granting issues in the future, discussing about, okay, this is the challenge that we have. So bringing them to the circle, not only being among the scientists, but also bringing policymakers and those who are going to think about how to allocate resources in the future. That is going to be so important because right now we know that kind of there are lots of specific attention to COVID-19, but there are some other issues that, policymakers should think about that. So bringing them and giving them an idea about, okay, that is going to be critically important to kind of keep on having the resources for kind of research studies across the board. That is going to be significantly important. So that might be one potential thought in terms of kind of keep on being connected to the policymakers and those who are going to provide funds for research studies across the world. As Ester has mentioned, in Brazil, and I'm kind of listening from many people across the world, they are going to have challenges in terms of how the research funds are going to be allocated for the next year. So that is going to be an important issue.
That would be very great. And one more thing, I know that all of you have PhD students. Hopefully I could finish my last data collection before this situation, but there are many people who cannot collect data. So, and if they are close to defend the thesis and they just cannot collect more data, maybe they just need more support from your advisors. I think this is quite fair to pay more attention to these aspects too.
Yeah, and it seems that Colin Hanlo has an idea. Colin, do you want to kind of share your thoughts?
Yes, I was just wondering, per Marom's suggestion or question to the group, that if we could kind of make something concrete out of this discussion. We have people all over the world on the call who will be starting to restart their labs, or they're already effectively doing some remote neuromodulation studies now. I wonder if it would be useful for people that actually are doing things successfully now, or they're about to start doing them, if maybe people would be willing to write up like just a one-page little description, or to like videotape or take pictures of their procedures and maybe, I don't know, send them to you, or to somehow upload them to some common kind of cloud-based resource that we could all look at. I think not only if we were to do that, for example, not only would it help educate the community, but we could potentially take that information and submit it to our own institutions to say, hey, look, other people are successfully doing this at their institutions, which might help our IRBs, for example, enable us to reopen. It's just an idea.
How would we? I think that's a great idea, and it would have to be done fast, right? And so, what do you think of how would that be done? I mean, I can certainly contact Brain Stimulation and ask them to provide, I don't know, some sort of rapid review. But is it just a website where we put stuff up? Is it one consensus document? Is it maybe just like anybody can write a short document? At least, is it a group effort? Is it just individual labs?
I suspect it would be fastest if we didn't have to come to a consensus. It would probably be most quick if we could basically just kind of crowdsource it. And so people could write something up and we could put it on some, like a Dropbox source or something like that. I mean, it might be great if a journal like Brain Stimulation would be willing to kind of carve out a section and even just we could write like a letter to the editor and say, hey, this group of people has created a sort of cloud-based resource, and they're putting up their ideas about how things could go, and then include sort of the link on the letter to the editor, maybe.
I just want to add, I think that that's a great idea, just to share experiences, because we've come up with our own the sanitizing protocol, but I think it would be strengthened by feedback from the group, and we can just share best practices. And I don't think we can overstate the importance of assuring our patients and making sure that the equipment is completely safe for use, both incoming and outgoing, for our own lab staff and definitely for our patients. So that's a great idea.
I'm going to talk to Brain Stimulation the next few days about how we can handle it. I mean, you can already submit a letter, but it won't be organized in a meaningful way. It'd be nice if these things were able to be indexed. And if it's in Brain Stimulation, it gets indexed, and then they would be they'd be subject to rapid review. One thing about reviewing, someone mentioned it. One thing we can all do is we can be faster in getting our own reviews in. And if we were to do something like this, everyone submitting would have to also agree to provide a review within a day or two of others. I would also say in general, and I've been on the other end of this, if your paper is stuck, you just got to email the editor and be like, what's going on? And oftentimes, because, there's one reviewer and that reviewer is just dealing with something and the whole thing's on hold. And so you got to kind of just kick it a little bit. That should not be the case, but unfortunately it is the case. But all right. So, specific action, whether it's Brain Stimulation or another journal, to allow individual labs to share their experiences, their protocols, images. Are there any more thoughts related to that?
I'm not sure, Marom, if we can even put together something like a rapid commentary or letter to editor, or even something like a list of recommendations in a group of people. We have done something like that in the field of, specifically for COVID-19, in the field of substance use disorder, and it has been published and it's online right now, so people are referring to that. So, thinking about how what could be the best practices for brain stimulation, something like remote brain stimulation. It depends on it is highly dependent on the journal editor, who would be willing to do something like a super fast track review and publication process in just few days. Meanwhile, we always have those repositories on OSF and bioRxiv and those things. There could be also another option in terms of putting those pieces on those platforms.
I think and I'm willing to advocate for Brain Stimulation to do ultra rapid review of these things. But if it's a group effort, it's going to take more time. It's going to take more than a few days for someone or a group of people has to really be on top of organizing what that is, and that's going to take more. I mean, that's why I like the idea of individual labs submitting. That's very quick, or even clusters of individuals, 3 individuals, 4 labs come together. It would be nice to have a broader consensus. It'd be more impactful, but someone would really have to be on top of, as you've done, organizing stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great kind of resource. So what we can do right after the meeting, we can just send people who have been active in the meeting discussing about, okay, if we want to put something together, what would be the outline, or what are who are going to be interested to contribute to this specific kind of activity. I mean, I know most of the people are overloaded right now, but thinking about if we can have an outline that people can put small pieces inside, that might be something that is going to be helpful. So, I mean, if Liege and those who are already doing remote brain stimulation, they definitely can take the lead. And I mean, definitely from the logistic point of view, we can support in terms of bringing others inside. So we can see how we can make that happen. So
people are overloaded, but the implications are catastrophic, right? We heard from Dr. Lisenby, and other people that when you cut services, the results are catastrophic. And for researchers, for young research, for long research, the inability to return to research is catastrophic. And so there is a motivation to say, yeah, I understand everyone's busy, but if we come together in the next few weeks and provide these kind of documents, there's clearly a benefit. I mean, it's why we're all here on this call.
Can you hear me, Marom?
Yes.
Hi. Maybe we can think of grouping people for pathologies and writing a review or, something in brain stimulation, such as a review or best suggestions for the different pathologies on which could be the best practice to go on during this post-COVID period. Like, what about multiple sclerosis? What about, aphasia or that there are big differences between the different pathologies that we treat, and because patients are different and the way we treat the patient are different, so we might suggest a different each of us which is proficient expert in a different field, like I'm working on aphasia, and I have some problems which I said regarding how to treat the patient verbally. I can do telerehabilitation. Then who can help me? Maybe I need a company which will help me to buy TDCS with very low prices, so I can give this TDCS to people at home. It could be interesting, I believe, to write best suggestions for the future, the near future, how to go on with our different clinical treatment protocols or not clinical protocols. Also, with neuromodulation, will be for them will be much easier than with people who works with human with brain damaged people or elderly people. Let's say elderly people also is a very big problem, because they will. I don't know in the United States, but what Italy is saying is that it will be very, very dangerous also in the future, unless they will find a vaccine. So I believe we have at least 1 year, very, very difficult year in front of us. So it could be interesting to each of us think of writing best suggestion of how to go on with the different population, different people or whatever.
Like that. I like that idea. I like the idea of small. It's not individuals and it's not a very large group. It's a small cluster. And I wonder would it be something like telemedicine and neuromodulation for X in the time of COVID, telemedicine and neuromodulation in the time for MS and you just bring in which techniques would be relevant, right? Whether it's ECT or TDCS or TMS would be decided by that cluster.
Right, and in reality, I'm not sure, have you seen the recent publication in Science in terms of the model that they provided for the time that we are going to face with COVID-19. It's quite interesting that they predicted that we are going to have problems with COVID-19 for even to something like 2024. So it is not going to be a sprint, it's going to be a marathon. So we need to kind of get prepared for not only for the few months, it's going to be something that we will face, even something like going up and down for the next couple of years. So it is going to be something important to be prepared for that. And especially for kind of elderly population, we cannot stop all those services. So we need to think about how those things are going to be happening in the future. Dirk, it seems that you have an idea. No, okay, good, fantastic. It was such a nice meeting. Anybody else that who has a kind of specific idea or suggestion inside?
Hamid, you have the emails of the speakers. We have the emails of all the registrants. But another alternative is, if Hamid, if you wanted to share your email and ask anybody who wanted to be, in the text, maybe if you wanted to, I don't want to put you on the spot, but then anybody who wanted to be involved in to be in the emails of this next effort could email you so that you would have.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I definitely would be happy to receive emails and putting people together. So if you just Google my name, you can find my email kind of on Google. So I would definitely be happy to receive emails from those who are interested to contribute. We definitely contact the speakers, and we can also send an email to those who are registered here. But meanwhile, those who are seeing the video and those who are interested to contribute in this collaborative effort in terms of putting a sort of a small piece for something like a consensus. We can start with a small piece, and then we can elaborate that in the next versions. Kind of putting other ideas inside.
It'd be better enough to email you. I'm just not, because we said we're not going to share emails when people registered for the call. I mean, not like I trust you, Hamid. You know what I mean? But so we can email that. We could send I'll figure out. We could send emails maybe to people who registered for this, but we couldn't share those emails with anybody else. And so the best thing is, if you're listening to this right now, please email Hamid so you'll definitely be on the list. And I expect that if we're going to do something, we're going to do it in the next week. I mean, we're going to start it in the next week.
Yeah, probably we need to start from today. But we definitely would move forward and see who is going to be interested to collaborate on that. And the good thing is that we already have few networks of collaborators in different kind of areas, and I'm hopeful that they would be interested to contribute to that idea as well. Okay, for the last slide, I need to kind of thank my assistants here. I mean, PhD students from different labs who are helping us for the ISAMNIG, INTF, and INTOM, and they basically help us a lot in terms of putting this panel together. And also Nikki from University of Tulsa, who is right now kind of helping us to kind of control the meeting group. So thank you very much, everyone. It was a really great meeting. It was something like a support group therapy for me. So I kind of learned a lot from people across the board. And also now I'm less anxious. Okay, it's the same problems that I have with my lab members and the studies that we are doing. So hopefully we will find a collective solution for these problems that we are facing these days. Okay, great. And hopefully we will meet each other in the next webinars. Thank you, Marom, for putting all these things together.
Thank you, Hamid. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.